Up until today, I did have a specific presentation prepared, but over the past couple days, something has happened and it's kind of forcing me into telling a story. And that story is myself, along with some members of our team, attended a peer mentorship group presentation on Tuesday. And as the presentation kicked off, the woman introduced herself and she mentioned, hey, we're a productivity company. We help organizations all over the world improve their productivity and create a productivity culture. And as she started getting into it, it was incredibly amazing to me that she was very much aligned with what we were going to talk about today. She talked about there's 3 things that you can utilize today to make your company more efficient and productive, and to build a productivity culture. And this is someone who speaks all across the nation, globally, to many people every day. She mentioned there's time, talent, and technology. And her focus was on technology. And we spent a good solid 2 to 3 hours just bringing up different types of technologies that you can inject and ideas you can utilize to make your company more productive. And I thought that was an absolutely bananas circumstance that 2 days before this conversation, someone who's an expert in her industry as far as productivity aligns exactly with we're trying to talk about today. So, excuse me. So when we start with the question, why should you care? It's not just me saying to you, you should care. There's other people out there, experts in the industry, and the market is really dictating that it is important that you care about technology. Because of these 3 things, time, talent, and technology, technology is something that is readily available to everybody. One of the things that's kind of leaped us into this situation is the market challenges we have today. The biggest one being Amazon. Amazon has crippled what the expectations are of every single end user to be something completely unrealistic for every business. So every end user, every business that you go B2B with, they're expecting Amazon-like an Amazon-like experience. They want to be able to have everything right now. They want the interface or interaction with you to be incredibly simple, quick, and easy. And then they want to be able to provide feedback and see other people's feedback on products, services, and the experience itself. So Amazon has really pushed us into this now expectation experience. Also, there are incredibly large numbers of competitors in your spaces. You're competing with people globally. Everybody can get into a market in some way, provide some service, some product, and you need to differentiate you from those competitors. And one of the best ways to do that is through some sort of technology. And then you look at just the overall cost of doing business between healthcare, salaries, inflation, challenges that each business is facing today, constantly the demand of the up and coming workforce, demanding higher salaries and faster growth into those larger positions. There's higher positions. Those costs are they're just a nature of doing business now. You have to be able to move people up and pay people more and provide more benefits. So doing less with more is really the focus of what we're talking about today. And I just want to stress, if anyone has questions, Karen, just to clarify on our side, they can post questions in the Q&A, and then if needed, we can stop and you can just interrupt, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. So feel free. We'd like this to be interactive. That's why we've got Eric here to answer any questions that you might have. So please post questions in the Q&A and we'll go through those answers later in the session.
Fantastic. Yeah, I would love this to be as interactive as possible. We'll have some polls and some questions we're going to ask you to solicit some feedback. But anything that comes to your mind mid conversation or mid slide here, please don't hesitate to post a question. All right. Moving on. Whenever we talk with an organization about technology, technology being a very, very broad stroke of a definition or of a term, we always want to say, yes, you should be looking at technology. You should be asking questions to your team about how we can leverage it. One of the main focuses, however, we always want to steer people towards is if you're going to invest the time, you're going to invest the money, there has to be some sort of tangible business result. We've laid here a couple ideas as to different ways that you can leverage technology and some results you can expect from them. If they don't in some way positively affect your business and generate some sort of result, you should not be really focusing on that. It should not be a priority. Nice to haves, hey, it'd be great if, but not really a big deal, doesn't really move the needle. Those types of things are wasted priority and wasted time. So whenever looking at a technology or evaluating a new ERP, putting in a new process, leveraging something you're already paying for today, but implementing a new module, something like that, it should do one of these 5 things. It should obviously generate more revenue. That's ultimately, ideally where we want to be. We want to increase our market share or drive revenue. Secondly, obviously reducing costs. If it can do something cheaper, we can do more with less. Technology is a great way to leverage that so that you can scale, you can grow, and keep the same team or the same size and not grow in cost. The third one is increase your operational velocity. So how quickly you can get these processes done. How quickly can you turn around incoming payments and apply them to invoices? How quickly can you communicate with your customers to solicit feedback to make changes quickly to your product or service? So leveraging some sort of technology so you can improve the speed in which you act and the agility of your organization. Improving the quality of your services or your products. So if upgrading a piece of equipment, changing the way in which you do maintenance to your equipment improves the way that your product is delivered or your services are delivered, that is a great use of technology, a great investment, because it is your product, it is your service, it's what you're being judged on in the marketplace. And then lastly, which I think is on the minds of everyone today, is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation, whether that's cyber, whether that's business interruption, whether that's your public identity, all these different things out there. There are technologies that allow you to better control, better prepare for when bad things do inevitably happen to your organization. Any questions at this point?
Eric, do you mind giving an example of how Copeland has leveraged technology within your business?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So we are a Microsoft shop, and we leverage Microsoft 365 and the tools that it provides as part of our suite of software. Our project manager is fantastic. She does a great job. She put together the slides, which you can tell because they're done very, very well. But she only has so much bandwidth to manage the projects and that we have. So when we have a large scale project that may touch 300, 500 users across the country, she'll leverage tools to properly communicate with those users, set up times to have one-on-ones if we have to hop on their machine and install something or configure something. She leverages tools like Microsoft Bookings to make that more streamlined. It's a better experience on the end user side. They're controlling their own schedule. And on our side, we can see everything. We have a full record of everything that is scheduled, was scheduled, and worked on by whom. So we can see a calendar and better plan for our support needs for the week. Hopefully that helps, give someone some idea.
No, thank you for sharing that.
All right. So we're at the poll time. Hopefully everyone's not fallen asleep yet. They're not looking at their emails at this time. We want to take a quick poll on everybody to see, do you know if and how your organization is leveraging technology to improve your competitive advantage? So do you know off the top of your head if your organization is focusing on technology? And then second follow-up question is, does your company leverage an internal IT staff member or multiple members?
We'll give everyone a minute to answer those questions and tally the results.
Fantastic. Now, can I see the Q&A has 2 entries in there? Do we have some?
Yeah, let me see here. So
So there's a question here. Why do I need to hear this? Can't you just meet with it?
with IT?
With IT? I think that's a fantastic question. That's definitely a leading question. Perfect timing as well. We will review that in the next slide.
Great. And
Let the answers-
as far as the poll, so first question, do you know if your organization is leveraging technology to improve your competitive advantage? 6 out of 7 people said yes, they do know their organization is leveraging technology. And second question, does your company leverage an internal IT staff? And 5 out of 7, interesting. So many are leaning towards the internal IT. 5 out of 7 is yes to that question.
Great. Outstanding. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate the feedback. So
yeah,
to answer the question that was brought up, okay, I want to preface this with, yes, we are a managed services provider. Yes, we like to handle everybody's IT. We like to be in control. We like to be in the driver's seat and develop that strategy. However, we are not against internal IT staff. We're not against internal technical people, even those who are engineers or individuals that have technical capabilities that are leaned on a daily basis to provide some sort of guidance. We are not against them. What's very important is that there is a clear understanding between your internal IT department and your leadership that the leadership is responsible for the decision making and pushing technology. It is not something that you would lean on your IT staff to be responsible for. It is 100% the leadership that needs to make sure that their company is a technology focused company. Internal IT department. So typically in the past and up until now, what we see is this department usually reports to finance. Usually it's around 1 to 3 individuals that are responsible for that. Their focus is typically on help desk or ERP administration. Most of the time, their days when they walk in, it's constantly addressing fires. And their salaries can range anywhere between 50 and 100K for an IT director. And those salaries range depending on experience and things like that. So this is typically what we see. Okay. When we compare the two, when we compare outsourcing your IT and having an internal staff, okay, these are the things that you can focus on. There's great things about the internal IT. We love great IT people, honestly. It's not something we're asking organizations to replace. The greatest parts about that is there's a huge trust factor. Usually that person's been with you for years. They've grown with your company. They've developed their skills in your company, and they've been through the ups and downs that your business has gone through. That is very difficult to replace. Okay, so there's a trust factor. Direct access and face-to-face connection. Your people feel secure because they can walk up to somebody and say, I need you right now. And even if that person can't help you at that time, they can look back at them and say, yes, give me 10 minutes. And it's a very easy face-to-face interaction that makes them feel very safe. And then just the overall knowledge of the business. They've been with you for so long. They know the intricacies, why you put this in place 10 years ago, why this happened 5 years ago. That information does come up when implementing something new, and it's very important to have that. There are more. These are just the top things that we're seeing. Some of the challenges with an IT, just having an IT person with no direction and no leadership ownership. Usually that person is not strategic. They are thinking about what's important, what's on the front of their mind right now. So if they're putting out fires that day, they're not thinking about what's happening next week. Having one person on staff presents challenges from a knowledge-based standpoint. You only have access to the knowledge of that one person. And if that one person has to take time off or they're unavailable, everything comes to a screeching halt. Typically, this person becomes overworked. There's a list that they just can't get to, and we hear the same things. Man, I've been trying to get to this for years. I've been trying to get to this for months. I know it's important, but I just can't get to it. There's so many fires, things like that. And then some important things is documentation. Usually when there's so many fires, things like documentation that take a few extra minutes, usually that suffers. And that's a very important thing if someone's not available anymore. Does anyone have any questions? All right. So another quick poll. Have you assessed or used an external provider for IT support? And do you know what an MSP is? So Karen, I don't know if you want to pop that up on the screen. There we go.
Okay, we've got the poll up. So see everybody putting their answers in here. This will be interesting to see. Okay, so it looks like, and I'll share the results for this, but 4 out of 5 people mentioned yes, they do use an external provider for IT support. And most know what an MSP is. So Eric, do you mind sharing what you should expect from an MSP and defining what that is?
Sure, absolutely. So an MSP is an organization that is a technical organization, and they do support other businesses, and they have a per month model. So it's a managed services model. So they wrap up a lot of services into one monthly fee, and they provide a list of things that help support your company. They provide support desk. They help reach out to your ISP or your vendors to help try and bridge the gap between your ERP and your hardware or something that's going on in your business. They help procure hardware, licensing, software, and they usually, if done well, will have a buttload of documentation about your organization and the devices that make that up. So all of your assets are tracked. The big one on this list, though, is the strategy management. Okay, it is important that the ownership, okay, of that strategy is still on the executive team of that company. I can't stress that enough. It is your responsibility. It is not mine. We are an MSP. It is not my responsibility to own the strategy. We can help with the strategy. We can help build a strategy. But forcing your team, your executive team, your directors, your managers to think technically, okay, and let me rephrase that, not think technically, but ask questions to assess if a technology can improve their business, that is their responsibility. You don't have to be technical to ask questions. Simple questions like, can we do this better? What are we paying for now? Is what we're paying for right now, do we have the ability within this license, or just adding a little bit of dollars per month to that spend, can we get something that helps address this issue? When you compare us to an internal IT department, and again, stressing that we're not against internal IT, this is just a comparison so you can understand. Typically, we are heavy documentation. There are organizations that do this incredibly well internally. Most of the time we see there is a lack of documentation. Larger knowledge pool, obviously there's a team behind the support ticket that we can pull from different avenues of knowledge. One of the biggest key things for an MSP is that they are a business. They have to measure success. They have to work with their team and coach their team. So in order to do that, there has to be some sort of measurable performance goals. There's performance indicators. So they're going to be, and they know how to measure the performance of their technical staff, whether that's something that's very difficult for a finance person to do or someone managing an internal team. Part of that team has the strategy, the strategic capabilities to talk with leadership and management. And there's a lot of proactive alerting and automation and triggers that are implemented so that you know if something bad's happening or trending towards happening. So there's tons of sensors and logical responsiveness through tickets and things like that. If something's going on, someone should take a look at this. So that is kind of the comparison between the internal and doing it outsourced. So to stress again, we align with many companies that have internal IT, and it's wonderful. When we work together with an internal IT, they bring a huge knowledge base of how the business operates, history, all types of information, and we're able to put together strategic plans with that person to help lift that technology for the organization. If you don't have an MSP or someone technical outside of your organization to help, it's very important your executive team and your management are constantly asking questions and then constantly on top of it and understanding how you get that technology component as part of your strategic discussions. It should be a line item on those monthly meetings. So Karen, what we're doing here is we have a case study of a medical trial company. Okay, this was an organization that we took over, and this is just an example of the types of things that you should be looking at. And the difference between just having an IT person or just reaching out to someone that you know and have them doing an okay job at helping you with tech. We took over an organization's IT infrastructure a while back, and this organization was in South Dakota. So we're in Western New York, and this was a company that was 2 time zones away. We took over from an internal IT person, and what we found was pretty alarming. Bloated infrastructure, not really that much documentation at all. There was a lot of issues with compliance because they're a medical trial company. They have to meet specific regulations, and there wasn't those checks and balances in place to check yes, we're compliant. Excuse me, and their current IT spend was about $6,300 a month. That's including licensing, support, infrastructure, and everything when we took that over. The strategy was developed by our team to spend some time, spend some money up front to shift the way in which their infrastructure was used, consolidate licenses, okay, leveraging the Microsoft 365 platform that they're already paying for, getting rid of Zoom, getting rid of their mobile device management and using all the tools within 365, shifting away from this server and VPN public drive connectivity mentality and shifting everything to Azure in the cloud. And then also making sure that while doing all of these things, there wasn't a risk created in the security side of things. So even adding security, making their business more agile, their technology that better met their needs, we actually brought their IT spend down almost $4,000 a month. Other organizations or IT people may not be thinking about how they can spend some money up front to get them to a better place later on.
I love this, Eric. Your general theme about people not being intimidated to leadership, to not be intimidated to ask these questions. In this particular case study, if the leadership team or organization didn't ask these questions, it met the medical trial company. It looks like the cost and the time that they would have wasted would have been significant. So
absolutely. And any provider, any internal IT person, pretty much anyone that is responsible for infrastructure and data, they are going to be focused on the easiest path. Okay, it's very easy for an MSP to sit there and just cut an invoice every month. Here's your 6,300. Here's your 6,300, and not evaluate that on a constant basis. It's very easy for an internal IT staff to say everything's working great. Let's just focus on these fires, and then all of a sudden, 12 months from now, you've got $60,000 worth of wasted money. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that when you have those, even if it's a simple question as, how do we get this cost down? And if someone says we can't, well, why not? You do not have to be technical. You just have to make sure you ask clarifying questions.
It's great.
I'm going to skip, since we're talking about those questions. Here are some questions that you can ask your internal IT team or some sort of provider you're using. We'll send you these slides. I'm not going to just sit there and read through them. But the key orange highlighted pieces are things you should be asking questions about. 100% should be asking about your backups. No question. What is going to happen if we go down? A lot of times an organization will go through what's called a business impact analysis, or a BIA. That's an organization just, again, doing things that you can do internally. Ask those questions. What happens if our phones go down? How long do we need to, or how long can they be down for us to see a significant negative impact? And then how are we going to mitigate that risk in some way? And you can go through that for email, phones, public drive, SharePoint drive, any sort of ERP, invoicing, payables. You may have very strict rules on how on your terms with your vendors. Are we going to be out of compliance for a specific regulation if we're not doing these things? And you just have to whiteboard that. And it's a conversation very few people want to have because they think it's technical. Okay. You can leverage a third party. You can leverage a third party to do a pen test. I recommend that anytime we work. Now, we own the infrastructure of our customers. Okay. When they come to us and say, hey, I want you guys to do a pen test, it would be very easy for us to run one and respond to them with the results. It's not a good check and balance situation. You should have a third party assess what your IT provider is doing. It's very critical that happens. I'm not going to say we're perfect. I'm not going to say that we've never made mistakes before, but another third party has come in and they say, hey, you're focusing great on this, but you still can't forget about this over here, the physical security piece. And we have to work with them to improve upon that.
Any questions? Anybody, any of these questions on this slide strike any of our audience or attendees? Has anybody been thinking about any of these items within their organization? Feel free to raise your hand. That way I can, if anybody verbally has a question, I'm happy to have everybody contribute. So.
All right. One of the biggest ones I know everyone has been hearing about because it's being shoved down our throats through every sort of ad possible is AI. What can we do with AI? Again, I think this all stems from asking the questions in a non-technical way. Blue sky this. It would really be fantastic if we can get paid faster. Okay, well, what does that mean? And put it on your management team, your directors, your leadership, without putting a specific name on the technology. Just say, if we can get these invoices into this email box and then distributed to where they need to go faster, it would increase this by 20%. Great. Now we've got something to shoot for. Now we find the right strategic partner, whether that's internal IT people or an outside person, to say, how do we get there? How do we plug the gap with some sort of technology? A lot of these things, many of you are probably already paying for. If you're utilizing Microsoft, you're definitely paying for a lot of it already. Power Automate. Instead of wasting so much time trying to get calendar invites all squared away, okay? Using a bookings app, using a task and planner application inside of 365. Leveraging Teams is a huge, huge component of this. And then just making sure, the organization as a whole has to understand what communication looks like. If someone sends an email, you shouldn't be having conversations via email. Conversations via email are the most disruptive piece of your day. Emails should be straight up FYI only, sending information or some sort of notification that is not urgent. You should be able to respond to an email within 24 hours. Maybe look at your inbox twice a day. Anything that's urgent or needs to be part of a discussion should be either a phone call, which sounds archaic, but it's still the #1 way for something urgent, or you're chatting and messaging inside some sort of messaging application like Teams. So leveraging these tools and making your organization communicate better is a huge productivity gain. And that right there is very simple to do.
Thank you very much, Eric. And your goal of this session again was education and urging leadership to ask the questions. I know that you mentioned that you would make yourself available post webinar and in the future should people have questions. So you've got your contact information shared on the slides, correct?
Yes, we do. Yes,
Okay.
and also in showing this last piece here, and I think David, thank you for popping in a question or a comment. David mentioned you went with an MSP 4 years ago. It is a bumpy road. It's not a perfect situation by any means. Switching a vendor is very difficult. Shifting from having someone to walk up to is very difficult. Submitting a ticket and then just wondering what's going on, I totally get it. It's a very, very difficult situation. Just knowing that your request is just out there and you don't know where exactly it is. But David, to your point, they help you with a lot, and you can continue to have those meetings with them. And I encourage you to have them at that table when you have your quarterlies, you have your monthlies, very minimal have your yearlies. Again, it's your responsibility. So this last slide, your responsibility is the next steps. Okay, it's got to be part of your strategy. Every quarter, you sit down, you talk with your team. How do the numbers look? The numbers look great, hopefully for everybody. As you get down the line of things to talk about, what technology did we put in place over the past 90 days that has helped our business, and how did it help us? That way, number one, you're constantly talking about it and looking for it. But number two, you're evaluating if it's actually delivering some sort of result. And if not, it's just nice to have. It's just wasted space.
Karen, did you put me on live?
I did. Dave, I figured you might have a question or comment for Eric. So.
Well, yeah, one thing I failed to mention, but just a little clarification. Eric had read my message. It was a bumpy ride initially, but it's really second nature to everyone now because we had gone from inside to outside. And as Eric pointed out, change can be difficult, but now we wouldn't have it any other way. Two things that I didn't see listed, which were quite important, compliance with our required cyber insurance. We wouldn't know how to deal with that, but our MSP assisted and actually helped us adjust to get that cyber insurance, which is becoming more and more difficult. Secondly, and Eric may or may not offer these services, but as a component of our MSP, we have a C-suite type meeting, which is hitting that strategic part with one of our MSP executives and our executive team. So he acts as our CIO kind of thing for the annual strategic piece, which I think is an important service as well.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that feedback. Those are two great examples. I probably couldn't have picked a better set. We do offer a virtual CTO role. It's something that's new to us over the past few years. Sitting down at the table and having that discussion, someone who can bridge the gap between this is our business challenge, what's actually out there is huge. If you have that as part of an internal person, you are very, very lucky. If you don't, I do recommend you seek that elsewhere. And then secondly, those insurance requirements, there's a reason why the cyber industry is still going in the same direction. It's constantly going that way. On the cyber side of it, if you can think of it, these cyber, they're actually organizations. They're mob-like organizations. They actually have tech support. If you need help buying cryptocurrency, they'll help you do that. There's a reason why they're in business, because it's very lucrative. And because insurance companies are paying out, they're becoming more stringent on who they're going to insure and how to file a claim. And they're going to require things like MFA being enabled, phishing protection being enabled, shifting away from antivirus to endpoint detection and recovery solutions. Are you logging activity? Are you using a SIM product, which is a log aggregation tool? All of these things, and it's your MSP or your internal your internal IT resource. Their job is to talk about those technologies, but it's your leadership team has to analyze, is this averting enough risk or not? And is it worth the value? Is the value there for the cost that you're going to spend?
Eric, do you mind? I'm curious on a WISP plan and what your recommendation is on for organizations on routine training, security training, IT training for staff. Do you have any guidance around that?
You'd be surprised at how often I tell organizations, if you need some sort of insights into how to leverage Outlook, how to use Teams, it goes upon deaf ears, or there's crickets, or people think it's too much of an ask. Your MSP should help you in identifying what technology to put in place and at least give you some ideas. We can show you how we leverage Teams. We can configure the solution for you. Where it kind of moves beyond our core competencies is doing like a full-blown 100-person rollout of this, because then there's more to it than that. There's on-site trainings. There's who's going to be our champion. How are we going to measure the success of the implementation? And it's a long, drawn-out process. There's organizations that do that better than us. We're more of the mindset, and most MSPs are. Some have like a department that does that. We're more of the mindset of the support, ticket guidance, and just connecting the dots, connecting the technology and the business, and helping direct you on your way to where you need to be. We'll still do a meeting with you and show your team how to leverage using categories in Outlook to better see your calendar and colors, and how to set up focus time so that your Outlook and your 365 world automatically puts focus time on your calendar when you can focus on the work that you want to do, and no one can interrupt you. There's all different types of ways that, and when you add AI into it and Copilot into it, I know there's those who are terrified of what that means. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Microsoft, when you use that, whether using the G Suite or Microsoft, they're going to be using your data to help you better run your business. It's just the way it is. So you can either leverage that and get on board, or you can fight that and be inefficient.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions anybody has? Thank you, Eric, for all of the information and just making it much more digestible for people. And I think that's a proficiency you and your team have, is just making IT much more digestible and being the expert and allowing people to feel comfortable to ask those questions. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, Karen, I love that term, more comfortable. It's okay not to be technical. Perfectly okay. What's not okay is to just block that off from being part of your strategy because you're unfamiliar with it. Your up and coming workforce is demanding that their workplace has good technology to help them do their job better. It's a requirement today. If people come on board and they see you got antiquated stuff, they're not going to stay very long. So it's okay to be uncomfortable with it. It's not okay not to address it as a need.
Great. So contact information, again, you can reach out to Eric or Sarah via email. They've got their emails listed there, and then via LinkedIn, certainly follow on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Eric, for presenting today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. It was fantastic. It was a great time, and thanks for the interaction, everybody.
Great. All right. Well, listen, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.